Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. This is the portion of our programming that we enjoy the most, where I get to be an old geezer now celebrating 27 years on Baltimore radio, 20 years of WNST, and not a moment without this guy who has followed my lead into a great career in sports radio up there in his hometown of the hub of Boston at 98.5. We welcome the main event, the man, the myth, the legend, and Super Bowl champion. We welcome Mike Flynn back onto the airways here at WNST in Baltimore. Flinner, does anybody give better introduction of you than I?
No, not even my wife, honestly.
She doesn't introduce you as Super Bowl champion, my husband.
No, that's why I love it. Honestly, to get my tires pumped up in my car, shoulders rubbed. That's the only reason why I come on, because I love the intros you give me.
Well,
it reminds me that I was a contender at one time. Nestor,
at any point at any Ravens game, once a year, I see someone wearing a Mike Flynn jersey, and I'm like, they never forget 62 around here. That's for sure. All right, so you know where we are. It's January. The Patriots are playing, and the Ravens are not playing. Patriots aren't even playing. They didn't even have to play last week. This week, they're a 13-point favorite. Dude, the beat goes on. It never changes. But I did love the little blockbuster story about, the beginning of the end for Brady and Belichick and Kraft and all that. Well, of course. I mean, it's a lot closer to the end than the beginning. A lot of guys, Marvin can say that. Harbaugh can say that. McCarthy, all of them can say that at this point, right?
Well, I mean, I think there is some smoke in the article. I think it's a little overstated. Let's not forget. Usually, right, when you have an owner who's a powerful owner, the guy's a billionaire. Obviously, there's ego and involved there. You have the greatest coach, the greatest quarterback. So of course, there's ego involved there. But usually, these things come to a head in 3 or 4 years. I mean, the shelf life on these big ego guys trying to make things work. It's much shorter than, what is it now, 17, 18 years.
Yeah, take a look at Rex Ryan. He did some good things in New York, and then all of a sudden he's on TV, right?
So, I mean, it's a little overstated that this could be the end, but there's certainly some tension there in terms of, Brady's philosophy and how he's changed, and he has a strength guru, and the timing of Garoppolo being here, and then when they traded him, his return. There's something to that. Do I think it's the beginning of the end? Well, I mean, you have a quarterback that's 40. The coach is, I think, 67. The owner's 76. I mean, you're right. If it's 2 or 3 years, is that the beginning of the end? I mean, of course it's near the end. But there's definitely some smoke there with the story. I think it's a little overstated about how close to the end that it is.
It's so close to the end that they gave Garoppolo away.
It's good for us to talk to.
They gave Garoppolo away. In the middle of the season. That was weird unto itself, and I think that began the sort of why would they do that? Why, if maybe they believe he can't play. Well, then he goes out to San Francisco and he can play. So, that's initially the idea was that he would take some sort of bridge contract, and I thought that was ridiculous. I mean, why would he do that? I mean, he has leverage. One way to look at it is that Belichick wanted Brady gone, and that's why he held him, and wanted his security blanket or break in case of emergency if Brady gets hurt. I kind of look at it now and think that maybe that Tom Brady kind of outlived the succession plan. I mean, we look at Belichick and he always has a plan, and you can't argue with it. It's always worked. And his rule of thumb is getting rid of a guy a year too early than a year too late. Granted, Tom Brady is certainly a different situation. He's not a positional player. And the reality is he had Garoppolo, and he was the guy. He was the guy that was going to replace Brady. It was pretty obvious here, but Brady just outlived it. I mean, he's played great. He's been great this year. I mean, he's a potential MVP. The way he looks and the way he plays, everything indicates he could do that for a couple more years. And if you can have the best quarterback in the league for a couple more years and you compete for titles, I mean, that's precious. You don't give that up for a guy and he looks good at San Francisco, but give him a 16-game season, give him the grind of a season when teams could game plan him. You don't give that up, and I think like that kind of makes sense to me. It was either way you look at it, Belichick botched the whole scenario. He certainly could have gotten more around the draft. I mean, there's no debate about that. But the reasoning why, to me, it looks like Brady may have just outlived the succession plan and left Belichick holding the bag. Like, what do you do with this kid? And he ended up dumping him for a second-round pick, which I think he's worth more than that, especially in a QB-starved market. But, Brady just keeps playing. Now, eventually you could say it's going to come back to haunt Belichick. Well, it could. I mean, there's no doubt if Garoppolo, to this point looks pretty good, in 6 or 7 years he's making a Pro Bowl and San Francisco's winning, but that's 6 years down the road. I think the way it would really hurt if next year the Patriots go 10-6, Brady gets hurt, or Brady has a year where it's 24 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. Well, then they really botched it. But I don't think that's going to happen. So if Brady plays at close to this level for a couple more years, I think it was the right move to make. It just wasn't handled properly.
Parade in 3 weeks up there, Flinner? I mean, is anything going to derail this thing as you see it?
Well, I mean, certainly not next week. I think Pittsburgh could beat him. I do. I think Pittsburgh's a talented team. They had the game won a few weeks ago. I'm not a big fan of Tomlin, the way the end of that game, how they played defensively when they gave up, the game-winning or game-tying scores. And obviously, I don't think they were prepared that when the call was overturned, it seemed like they were scrambling. They kind of should have anticipated that. With that said, I think they have as much talent, or if not more talented, than the Patriots team, and I think they should have won that game. So I think Pittsburgh could beat him here. I really do. I like to see how they play this week, see what New England looks like, but I think they got a chance. But certainly this week should be a relatively easy game. The bottom of the AFC was pretty bad. I mean, you looked at those games this weekend, and not even playoff caliber teams, in my opinion.
Well, we had a playoff caliber team sitting here golfing because they couldn't stop a 4th and 12.
Golfing, but I mean, I agree. I mean, would they have been better with the Ravens' better performance? Maybe, but still.
I don't know if they could have been better than Tennessee. Tennessee won. Right?
I mean, you're watching that game, though. There was a sequence there, and I believe it was I think Kansas City had like a third, and it wasn't even a full one. It was half a yard. They run some crazy option with Alex Smith, and there was a running into a kicker, but there was offsetting penalties, and there was a muff, and it was just like over the span of like 2 minutes, it was some of the worst playoff football I've ever seen. And then you go to the Jacksonville Buffalo game yesterday, which was an abomination. It's just on the lower end of the AFC, it just isn't very good. So I don't, I think Jacksonville could be a pain because of what they could do defensively. But at the end of the day, I think it should be Pittsburgh and New England. But I do think Pittsburgh could win. I think they could win in New England, and I don't think it's an open and shut case that the Patriots go to the Super Bowl.
To think that Blake Bortles could go into Pittsburgh and win? Well,
I mean, he could barely beat Buffalo in Jacksonville, so I don't think he could go in there and win. I mean, I think it would be similar to the game earlier in the year when Ben Roethlisberger imploded. But I also think Pittsburgh is a much, much better team than that team that Jacksonville that went in there. And I don't think Jacksonville's as good. If you look at Bortles the last 3 or 4 weeks, he's got like 6 picks in 2 games, and what he did yesterday, I don't believe Pittsburgh certainly is not going to let Bortles run for 90 yards, which is the reason why they won. So I don't know if they have enough offense to win that game. But, good defense. I mean, Baltimore, great defenses travel well in the playoffs. You're going to assume the weather's going to be less than par there up in Pittsburgh. So of the two teams, I would give Jacksonville more of a fighting chance. But I still think it's Pittsburgh and New England.
Happens quick, doesn't it? Like the Rams lose after a beautiful year.
Crazy.
Kansas City, it's over with. It happens suddenly. And then so does the New Orleans Saints, right? With Drew Brees and big lead. They blow the lead. They come back. They wind up winning. Now, you have to look at him as being the guy left in this tournament on that side of the fence that can dictate some things. Same thing with Matt Ryan as well in Philadelphia.
I mean, I think Atlanta's going to win this game. I 5, 6, 7 weeks ago,
And I grew up, I used to watch Philly a lot, and so I have a little interest in watching Philly play, and they're really good. I mean, at one point, I think they were the best team in football. I mean, you look at what Carson Wentz was doing, MVP of the league, but defensively, a team that could get after you by only rushing 4, so you have so many more options on the back end. You couldn't run on them. They kept you one-dimensional. They were a phenomenal football team, and once Wentz got hurt, Nick Foles is the shell of what Wentz is, and he hasn't played well. The biggest thing is their defense hasn't played well. I feel like, those divisional games, there's always a team that's going to get dumped. And I think Philly is that team. I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to beat anybody in the playoffs if they haven't looked good. And even Minnesota now, I think they're built a little bit better because Case Keenum, he has played the year and he's exceeded expectations. He's actually been pretty good, but I just can't get him out of my mind that that's the guy. He's beaten somebody in the playoffs. He's going to take a team to the Super Bowl. I don't believe it yet.
You know what's incredible, though? If Atlanta wins on Saturday in the early game, they would go to the winner of that game. If Minnesota were to win, Minnesota will wake up on Sunday having to win at home and stay at home and can win a Super Bowl at home. That's really an incredible way to wake up on a Sunday.
It would, and which tells me it's not going to happen. I mean, like all these teams, right? It doesn't, seriously, storybook endings, those are so few and far between.
Minnesota deserves that, by the way, because I was there when Billick got hired. That was 20 years ago, and they still haven't figured that out.
When it comes to storybook endings and happy endings, I always take the field. That's life, I'm like, you're telling me they're going to wake up. You're right. Sunday morning, you got the Falcons coming to your place where you could have the Super Bowl in Minnesota. Dude, that is too storybook for real life.
And here comes Drew Brees in here to screw it all up on Sunday, right?
I mean, I think offensively they're pretty good. I mean, the Carolina defense I think is good. Now you're at home, you play in the Dome. Brees, I believe, is 5-0 now at home in the playoffs, so he's really good there. But dude, they can run the ball. Kamara, Ingram, Brees can still throw the ball, but their defense, they gave up 25 yesterday. That was a drop ball in the end zone. They missed a field goal. They gave up some big plays. I don't know how good their defense is. So now you're going on the road, Minnesota. Historically, you look at dome teams on the road. I like New Orleans. I think if this game was in New Orleans, I would like New Orleans on the road here with that defense, and I like what Zimmer's doing up there. I think it should be a good game. I think New Orleans has a fighting chance, but I'm going to lean with Minnesota here. But I like Atlanta versus Philly.
Mike Flynn joining us here. He is up in Boston doing sports radio at 98.5. His boy Jake is about to end a one-year run on Broadway, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory coming up this weekend. And all the Flynns will be at home for the Super Bowl, maybe for the Patriots to be there. We'll find out in a couple of weeks. Flynn, we got our own off-season thing going on here, and obviously the 4th and 12. And as I've pointed out, I mean, Harbaugh brought this organization back, as did Flacco, Suggs, from Billy Cundiff, and losing in that sort of a fashion to win a Super Bowl the next year. Are you shocked that he has survived this? I mean, we're all shocked that Marvin has survived in Cincinnati, right? But I think the Harbaugh thing here, there are definitely some people that think 4 out of 5 years they haven't made the playoffs 3 in a row, that there aren't a whole lot of places or a whole lot of people that would survive that in the NFL.
No, I mean, you look at Mike Mularkey, right? I don't know how safe his job is, and he just won a playoff game. I mean, obviously, they lose that game, he's gone. There's talk of Andy Reid. Now, I don't know if you want to go in a different direction. He's done some good things there, but you see coaches all the time, right? They have success, then they fall off, and changes are made. I mean, you don't make the playoffs 4 times in 5 years and 3 in a row. In a conference, I think, and I said it this year, you look at Tennessee, Jacksonville, Kansas City, who lost 6-7 at one point, and made probably better than that. But I mean, Buffalo. I mean, the bottom half, the bottom 4 teams in the AFC were not very good. So if you're one of these teams that are on the outside looking in, there's some serious soul searching, and you can go back to last year. So you don't make the playoffs 4 to 5 years. I don't understand why you wouldn't feel the heat. Now, I'm not covering the team on a daily basis, so the dynamic with him and the owner, I don't know as much as you do.
Well, clearly it's very good, right?
Yeah,
clearly.
I mean, obviously, 4 out of 5 years, I mean, you would think, right? This year was the make or break year, and then the way you lose, that's very disappointing.
I took that walk, Flitter, for the press box down there last Sunday, And I just thought, wow, anything could happen here. You know, I've never experienced one like this, where 4th and 12, third year in a row, you know, quarterback's getting older, star on the defense played, you know, incredible. I mean, a guy you played with played incredible in Suggs. But, you know, that this would be a time to say, all right, we got to rethink things around here.
You know, and I don't know what happened behind closed doors if there wasn't a conversation, but pretty quickly he came out. You would think there'd be some time to like sit down and say, listen, you know, this is the NFL, and with and we've talked and texted back and forth with, you know, empty seats in the stadium, ratings are down around the league. You know, you can't afford not to have a product that people are disappointed in, okay? And ownership knows that, right? So, I mean, not making the playoffs 4 out of 5 years, I mean, listen, that's something. I mean, people aren't I mean, listen, NFL fans, if you watch those games, AFC fans, Ravens fans, on and on, if you watch those 2 games from the AFC and you're thinking to yourself, you're telling me we can't be one of these 4 teams? I just saw a 10-3 football game. I saw quarterbacks throwing it in the dirt. I see, you know, a guy, Marcus Mariota, goes 19 for 32, can't hit water from both, and we can't make this tournament? And this guy's coming around for another year. Like that's what I would be thinking. If I'm a devout fan base to the Ravens, I'm thinking, like, you can't be one of these bottom 4 teams. Okay, I get it. We're not New England, but they got something special going on right now. But certainly, we can't be one of these bottom 4 teams. I mean, that's disappointing. So there needs to be answers, and I don't, you know, what's going to happen next year. I got to believe at some point, you know, you don't make the playoffs next year. He's got to answer for that. Now, you know, I saw they hired a quarterbacks coach who'll be good. They're trying to get Chuck Pagano back, who had success there with the defense. You know, the offensive line was improved that I saw. You fixed that. Marshall Yonah comes back. I mean, there's changes you could make. But yeah, man, like to me, all these GMs and coaches, and you didn't make the AFC playoffs this year. If I'm a fan watching this game, I'm scratching my head and say, how is that possible? I mean, that Bills game, watching that Bills football team and that Jaguars game. I mean, honestly, Nestor, you see better Thursday night games. I mean, it was embarrassing.
Mike Flynn joining us here. You can follow his journey at Flynn985 out on Twitter as well. So, you know, then there's the whole Boston thing going on up there where somebody told me last week, I think it was Greg Bedard, that the Red Sox are now the number 3 team in the Boston area. Is that a fact?
It should be. I think Patriots are, you know, it used to be Red Sox.
And everything else.
The Patriots have overtaken them. But, you know, you have a team in the Boston Celtics that are an exciting team. You know, they're a young team. You know, I think they maybe have the best record in the NBA. And honestly, you know, like up in the Northeast here, you know, hockey is big, you know, and for a lot of time was a Bruins town. You have a Bruins team very similar, right? A lot of young players that are playing well. So you have like these young guys making a very, unentitled type of guys on the basketball team, keeping their head down playing basketball. Same thing with hockey, and they have a lot of buzz, and people are kind of gravitating to them. Now you have a Red Sox team that at times can be very unlikable. The baseball culture, entitled type of guys, and you have
the Eckersley story was a big story up there, wasn't it? I mean, that was the Eckersley thing that didn't sit well with the fan base.
Did not sit well with a lot of people for a lot of reasons. One is just because Price being an a-hole in general, and obviously Eckersley is a well-liked guy and a guy who you want to talk about has done the ups and downs of a baseball career, been hammered in this town, has been loved in this town. Marital, personal issues, alcohol. I mean, that guy has run the gamut of Hall of Fame and this, that, right? So the people have a lot of respect for him. And listen, honestly, I'll listen to the games up here and watch him. He calls a great game. I don't find him offensive at all. He just calls it like he sees it like, hey, that's a play, a second base, nothing. And he gets attacked on a team playing. A lot of the Peter guys who were cheering it didn't sit well. And I got to tell you, the team never recovered. And
fired the manager, right? I mean, you talk about expectations on John Harbaugh or Belichick. The Yankees and the Red Sox both changed managers in a year when they both made the playoffs because they're pissed that the Astros
won. 2 years in a row. It shows you the difference, and honestly, probably, and I can honestly say, probably warranted. To be honest with you, because there were things that were fraying there, and you go to the playoffs 2 years in a row and you win one game barely. You have to answer for that, but. to what Bedard said, there is. Like, there's this kind of like, all right, enough's enough. Yankees are making moves in the offseason. You're not making moves. And you could just see it in terms of, attendance at games. But it's the Red Sox. I mean, listen, it's kind of ingrained in the culture here.
Yeah, they'll be playing in June and no one else will be, right?
Yes. I mean, it'll come around, and at some point when the winter sports die down and the fever, the frenzy will get worked up again. But right now, they've been disappointing. They haven't been likable, and now you have these, the Celtics and the Bruins have these younger guys that are just playing well above their heads that people are gravitating to them.
Dude, always a pleasure, man. Anything you want to say on the end of the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory run? How many times have you seen the show with your boy in it?
Too much to count, but it's you've been to live theater and live concerts, right? You could go see the same band play 10 times, and there's always a different element to it, something that sticks to you. Well, it's very similar to live theater. But hey, listen, we're going to miss it.
Well, give me the fascination, having done this as a parent. If you were on my Donahue show right now, and I'd bring you and Mary and say you took your boy to New York, you hung out, I think you enjoyed it more than anyone else in your family, right? Because basically you got to run around New York, and you have like 12 other kids back at home. So like whoever's on New York duty has a pretty good gig, right?
Oh, great gig. Great gig. I mean, you're on theater time. My son, who just turned 11, goes to bed at like 10:30 at night. The kid sleeps in the night. He does his schoolwork. I mean, I don't know how he's going to react to suburban life. I mean, he has, he's meeting celebrities that go to the show. There's always parties like this like, and not late night parties, but they have cast parties and like this. Like semi-charmed life who now he has to come back, and I'm going to Jake, you need to go to bed at 7:00. You got school at 7 in the morning the next day. I mean, I actually have a little sympathy for him because I'm like, dude, you got to come back to this. You're going to be one of the normal people. So, but listen, it was fun. He enjoyed it. He's a talented little guy, and I'm sure good things will come his way. But it's good to have him home. We do miss him. His brothers miss him, and it's good to have us all under one roof.
Well, you said you've seen the show more than you can count. Like, you've been behind the scenes at the Super Bowl and running out on the field. Give me a little Broadway what's something a guy like me wouldn't know about the business of Broadway or how it all sort of operates, how the sausage is made, Flinner?
Well, I mean, it's believe it or not, and I find it is quite a grind for at least the adult one. I mean, it's 8 shows a week nonstop, and it's you have vacation time, but it's limited when you could take it. Very limited sick days, and having to be in there, and so much depends on the crowd. Feedback from the crowd. I've been to shows where you want to talk about dead in the water. I mean, you go out there and there could be 1,400 people in the stadium, like similar to in a football game, and it's like you're performing the show for yourself. And there's other times where they laugh and clap at everything, but it's kind of a grind. You're out there and you like football games, right? It's entertainment, but you've been to musicals, right? Those tickets are not cheap.
Every night you got to lay out, right?
You got to lay out because you know what? These people are dropping $150, $175, $200, depending where you see. And it's like, you've just did 9 shows. They've had some 9-show weeks. You got to go out there and perform. Now, fortunately, Jake, with a couple other Charlies, is immune to some of that. He's sheltered from some of that. But some of these, the older ones, like just to go out in the grind and having to perform every show, which was surprising. And actually, that it's not as glamorous as you thought it is. It's not like movie stars where you go in the set and they pamper you. And
football's all glamorous until I see you guys in the cold tub on Monday and Tuesday.
Yeah, it's very similar to that. Like when you see behind the scenes, you're like, oh, really? You just, you're not.
So when you get hit in the head like that, that really does hurt, right?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
And like Broadway, but the Broadway stars, they are like the coolest people though. Like they are like the total opposite of this, the swills in Hollywood and the Golden Globes and the highbrow and look at us in their bubbled world. Like, they're like super normal people, because there are a few people that get paid premiums, but most of them, it's not the money that you think. And it's very, I mean, these people come out of the stage door, there's a couple people that'll get autographs, and they kind of like blend into the crowd. So it's really cool. It's just like a totally non-Hollywood feel type of world. Like the high-end stars in like Broadway that I have met through, with Jake and everything, like they are like the coolest, like laid back, like, oh, hey, you're in Dunkin', hey, I'll get a coffee. But yet, they're just at the pinnacle of their career, as opposed to like, the Hollywood crew that I've come together, totally different feel, totally different air about them. Like, so they're really cool people, which I didn't know what to expect.
What's your kid's going to be around in a professional environment?
Yeah, and they were super cool. I mean, certainly, like, there are kids and people that are in the Hollywood world and do the movies. If that comes Jake's way, he's done some stuff that's great. But to start in this environment with those type of people certainly gave him more of a reality check of what it's about, as opposed to the movie end of it, where it's totally different.
All right, scoop him up and bring him back to the Haba up there, maybe in time for another parade or two. Flitter, always good to catch up with you, man. Out of season, you don't come down and have crabs, and you don't come down for Red Sox games anymore or anything like that.
Well, I'm going to be down. My son is on a travel baseball team. He has a tournament this April.
Okay.
At Cal Ripken's place up in Aberdeen.
Sure. All right.
So I'm going to come down. The Orioles are playing the Indians. We'll go to a game. I have some friends with us. I'm going to take them to get crabs, some of the kids in the team, and then we'll do it right.
Do you remember going to the Ripken Stadium in Aberdeen with me in a previous life?
Oh, in a previous life. We had a pretty good time. I mean, where else could you go see Bryan Adams and Leopard on the same car? Do you know what I mean?
Leopard, Bryan Adams, all in it. Beer was involved.
Another time.
We're getting old, Flinter. We're getting old, man.
Getting old, buddy.
I'm releasing Purple Rain 2 this week. It's been 5 years since the Ravens championship. 5th anniversary is already here. And you guys are now working on, what are we, 16, 17? How far into this are we?
Oh, my God, I can't even. I'm looking forward to the 20th anniversary, though.
It's 17 is what the number is. So
that's good.
Well, all right, brother.
In Baltimore for a game, then.
Take care of yourself. Get your kid back up there.
You.
There he goes, Mike Flynn. Flynn985. The way to find him out on Twitter, and his son wrapping up a triumphant one-year run on Broadway in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You can find me out on the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. By downloading the TuneIn Radio app, we do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world you want to go. The morning newspaper ships to your email inbox at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. The aforementioned Purple Rain 2 will be released on a daily basis, chapter by chapter, beginning this weekend. 24 chapters, 24 days. And, what else are you doing in January? You might as well read about the ghosts of Ravens championship past. There you have it. Any breaking news happens first on our WNST tech service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis Colazzos will be here on Thursday driving you home from 3 until 5. It is the SSV on WNST. We are taking bus trips to Ray Lewis in Canton in the Hall of Fame in August. I'm putting that on sale later on this week. We have an interest list. Toss me an email, nasty@WNST.net. We'd love to have you along for the ride with us later on in the year. Luke and I will be in Minnesota 2 weeks from now for Super Bowl 52 coverage. Whew, we're getting there, right? It's 2018. We're going to be drafting football players, doing offseason, doing all sorts of stuff around here and getting ready for baseball season. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Taos in Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.